From the Epic of Gilgamesh, translated by N.K. Sanders. The epic opens with an introduction to Gilgamesh, the king of the city-state of Uruk. Gilgamesh, who is 2/3 god and 1/3 man, is handsome, courageous, and powerful. But he is also arrogant, and he continually oversteps his bounds as a ruler. His people, upset over the liberties Gilgamesh takes with them, pray to the gods for relief. In response, the gods send a match for Gilgamesh, the wild man Enkidu, reared by wild animals and unfamiliar with civilization. When the two men meet, they engage in a fierce wrestling match, which Gilgamesh wins. But the two men become close friends. Enkidu, now civilized, joins Gilgamesh on a series of adventures. First, they destroy Humbaba, the demon who guards the cedar forest, and then they level the forest. When they dare to criticize the goddess Ishtar, who makes the romantic overtures to Gilgamesh, she sends the bull of heaven to ravage the land as punishment. Gilgamesh and Enkidu destroy the bull. The gods could not tolerate such disrespect, and they decree that one of the heroes must die. In this section of the epic, Enkidu has fallen mortally ill. The death of Enkidu. As Enkidu slept alone in his sickness, in bitterness of spirit he poured out his heart to his friend. It was I who cut down the cedar, I who leveled the forest, I who slew Humbaba, and now see what has become of me. Listen, my friend, this is the dream I dreamed last night. The heavens roared, and the earth rumbled back in answer. Between them I stood before an awful being, the somber-faced man-bird. He had directed on me his purpose. He was a vampire face, his foot a lion's foot, his hand was an eagle's talon. He fell on me, and his claws were in my hair. He held me fast, and I was smothered. Then he transformed me so that my arms became wings covered with feathers. He turned his stare towards me, and he led me away to the place of Irk-Allah, the Queen of Darkness, to the house from which none who enters ever returns, down the road from which there is no coming back. There is the house whose people sit in darkness. Dust is their food, and clay their meat. They are clothed like birds with wings for covering. They see no light. They sit in darkness. I entered the house of dust, and I saw the kings of the earth, their crowns put away forever, rulers and princes, all those who once wore kingly crowns and ruled the world in the days of old. They who had stood in the place of gods like Anu and Enlil stood now like servants to fetch baked meats in the house of dust, to carry cooked meat and cold water from the water-skin. In the house of dust which I entered were high priests and acolytes, priests of the incantation and of ecstasy. There were servers of the temple, and there was Etana, that king of Kish, whom the eagle carried in heaven in days of old. I also saw Samuquan, god of cattle, and there was Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, and Belit-Sheri squatted in front of her, who is the recorder of the gods and keeps the book of death. She held a tablet from which she read. She raised her head. She saw me and spoke. "Who has brought this one here?" Then I awoke like a man drained of blood who wanders alone in a waste of rushes, like one whom the bailiff has seized, and his heart pounds with terror. Gilgamesh had peeled off his clothes. He listened to his words and wept quick tears. Gilgamesh listened, and his tears flowed. He opened his mouth and spoke to Enkidu. "Who is there in strong-walled Uruk who has wisdom like this? Strange things have been spoken. Why does your heart speak strangely? The dream was marvelous, but the terror was great. We must treasure the dream, whatever the terror, for the dream has shown that misery comes at last to the healthy man. The end of life is sorrow." And Gilgamesh lamented. "Now I will pray to the great gods, for my friend had an ominous dream." This day on which Enkidu dreamed came to an end, and he lay stricken with sickness. 1 whole day he lay on his bed, and his suffering increased. He said to Gilgamesh, the friend on whose account he had left the wilderness, "Once I ran for you, for the water of life, and I now have nothing." A second day he lay on his bed, and Gilgamesh watched over him, but the sickness increased. A third day he lay on his bed. He called out to Gilgamesh, rousing him up. Now he was weak, and his eyes were blind with weeping. 10 days he lay, and his suffering increased. 11 and 12 days he lay on his bed of pain. Then he called to Gilgamesh, "My friend, the great goddess cursed me, and I must die in shame. I shall not die like a man fallen in battle. I feared to fall, but happy is the man who falls in battle, for I must die in shame." And Gilgamesh wept over Enkidu. Gilgamesh laments Enkidu's death for 7 days and nights. Finally, he has the people of Uruk fashion a magnificent statue of Enkidu as a memorial. Then the grieving Gilgamesh leaves Uruk. The search for everlasting life. Bitterly, Gilgamesh wept for his friend Enkidu. He wandered over the wilderness as a hunter. He roamed over the plains. In his bitterness he cried, "How can I rest? How can I be at peace? Despair is in my heart. What my brother is now, that shall I be when I am dead. Because I am afraid of death, I will go as best I can to find Utnapishtim, whom they call the Far Away, for he has entered the assembly of the gods." So Gilgamesh traveled over the wilderness. He wandered over the grasslands, a long journey, in search of Utnapishtim, whom the gods took after the deluge, and they set him to live in the land of Dilmun, in the garden of the sun, and to him alone of men they gave everlasting life. At night, when he came to the mountain passes, Gilgamesh prayed, "In these mountain passes, long ago, I saw lions. I was afraid, and I lifted my eyes to the moon. I prayed, and my prayers went up to gods. So now, O moon, God, Sin, protect me." When he prayed, he lay down to sleep, until he was awoken from out of a dream. He saw the lions round him, glorying in life. Then he took his axe in hand, he drew his sword from his belt, and he fell upon them like an arrow from the string, and struck and destroyed and scattered them. So at length Gilgamesh came to Mashu, the great mountains about which he heard many things, which guard the rising and the setting sun. Its twin peaks are as high as the wall of heaven, and its paps reach down to the underworld. At its gate the scorpions stand guard, half man and half dragon. Their glory is terrifying. Their stare strikes death into men. Their shimmering halo sweeps the mountains that guard the rising sun. When Gilgamesh saw them, he shielded his eyes for the length of a moment only. Then he took courage and approached. When they saw him, so undismayed, the man-scorpion called to his mate, "This one who comes to us now is flesh of the gods." The mate of the man-scorpion answered, "2/3 is God, but 1/3 is man." Then he called to the man Gilgamesh. He called to the child of the gods, "Why have you come so great a journey? For what have you traveled so far, crossing the dangerous waters? Tell me the reason for your coming." Gilgamesh answered, "For Enkidu. I loved him dearly. Together we endured all kinds of hardships. On his account I have come, for the common lot of man has taken him. I have wept for him day and night. I would not give up his body for burial. I thought my friend would come back because of my weeping. Since he went, my life is nothing. That is why I have traveled here in search of Utnapishtim, my father, for men say he has entered the assembly of the gods and has found everlasting life. I have a desire to question him concerning the living and the dead." The man-scorpion opened his mouth and said, speaking to Gilgamesh, "No man born of woman has done what you have asked. No mortal man has gone into the mountain. The length of it is 12 leagues of darkness. In it there is no light, but the heart is oppressed with the darkness. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the sun there is no light." Gilgamesh said, "Although I should go in sorrow and in pain, with sighing and with weeping, still I must go. Open the gate of the mountain." And the man scorpion said, "Go, Gilgamesh. I permit you to pass through the mountain of Mashu and through the high ranges. May your feet carry you safely home. The gate of the mountain is open."